Hello, Steeler Nation, and welcome to your SteelerNation.com podcast, sponsored by Total Sports Enterprises. I'm your host, G. Stryker. With me is my co-host that is giving Bud Dupree's Barbecue a run for his money, Hunter Homesteck. How you doing, Hunter?
My man, I'll go head-to-head with Bud on a barbecue contest. You know, I kind of like my odds. I'm sure Bud's barbecue is fantastic, but I believe in mine as well. And I think actually last year when they did the steak cook-off, Stephon Tuitt won it. So maybe we need to throw
Ooh.
Yeah, I think we maybe need to throw Tuitt into the mix to really just spice it up a little bit. Funny story real quick.
Yeah.
In training camp last year, I asked Tuitt, this was like right after that video went out, I got to talk to Tuitt one-on-one, and I asked him what the secret to that steak was that won the contest, and he told me he can't tell me or else he would basically have to kill me. He didn't quite use those words, but that's what he said. With a laugh, I'll admit, which did make me feel a little better because Stephon Tuitt saying that he was going to bury my body was not a great feeling because I'm like, you totally could. I can't do anything. Can't out-muscle you, can't outrun you. I'm just done.
Jeez, I know. Somebody that big and that fast, I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's not fair. It's
not, especially since he knows how to eat. But I would love to see a cooking championship, Hunter versus Bud versus Tuitt. That would be amazing to watch.
Let's do it.
Steeler Nation would love to see that too. And,
I'm weighing.
Yeah. So first things first, let's talk about Total Sports Enterprises, Steeler Nation, Twitter. They are giving away a free signed DJ jersey, Diontae Johnson. So today you can get and find a Diontae Johnson jersey by going over to Total Sports Enterprises on Twitter at Total Sports ENT. Retweet this post showing the beautiful play of Diontae Johnson stopping on a dime, turning around on the quick curl, and hopping into the end zone for his second touchdown of the day. Big day out of him. Big day out of for Total Sports Enterprises too, giving away a Diontae Johnson jersey after he had another amazing play. And I love watching this replay here on their Twitter feed because, dare I say, that is Antonio Brown-esque.
It so is. I mean, we say it all the time on this show, and it's so obvious by this point. But, man, Diontae is so electric, so fun to watch. I know we both really like his game. I mean, honestly, last week, in my opinion, he should have had a third touchdown too. The free play that he kind of dropped in the end zone. I feel like, honestly, he had a great shot of hauling that one in and probably should have. But what a game for him. I love that guy. I might need to win that jersey myself. I'm overdue for a Diontae Johnson jersey, I feel like.
Well, I'm putting in my chances as well, but with so many Steeler fans out there, I'm happy if you guys win it instead of me. Yeah. I understand. But I would love to have that one as well. So now, honestly, like, Hunter, this is a unique experience for all of us as Steeler fans.
Yeah.
We have never been the only undefeated team in the entire NFL in any season. And this year, 2020, finally something goes right for Steeler fans. And we are the team in 2020, the last one on the hill with Miami waiting to pop their champagne corks if we go down.
It's crazy, man, because Mike Tomlin mentioned it today in his press conference, but kind of it feels like every week the game the Steelers are in is the game of the week now. Is, you know, the Browns, Titans, Ravens. Now this week it's like they're just that team again. It feels cool for the Steelers to have this level of hype. I can tell, you know, the city's very excited about it. Fans are super animated about it. Yeah. Being undefeated is just a good feeling, and when you're the only undefeated team, it's that much sweeter. So run it back to 1979, the last time they did it and started 7-0. That season ended up okay. I'd say if this one ends the same way, right? This one ends the same way. I have a lot of happy Steelers fans.
Right. And I want to give you these raw stats and throw them at you because, honestly, the Steelers are fortunate to be undefeated, but just reading these raw stats makes it I just want to give them to you. Ryan Tannehill, 18 for 30, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Derrick Henry, 20 yards, 20 carries, 75 yards, 1 touchdown. A.J. Brown blowing up 153 yards, a touchdown, and 3 interceptions on D, no turnovers the other way. Looking at those numbers, I would have thought the Steelers got blown out of the water.
Yeah, it seems like a loss on paper, especially
Yeah,
the -3 turnover differential being the biggest
that was
aspect of that.
huge.
And the
Huge.
Titans have done so well this all year. They actually lead the league in turnover differential at +9. They take care of the ball. We talked about it with Tannehill. You know, he's in the MVP conversation, not necessarily because he's just blowing up stats, but he's winning games and winning games efficiently and occasionally having, that 300+ yard outing. It helps when you have a running back like Derrick Henry. It takes a lot of pressure off of your passing game. But we did see, early on, Tannehill for sure had some passes that could have and arguably should have been picked off. They got
Yeah,
super lucky on some tip passes and just weird bounces and things of that
yeah,
nature.
yeah,
But and Derrick Henry's stats, again, when you read it, that sounds like an okay day for him. 75 yards, a touchdown. That's decent. If you had him in fantasy, you're not mad. But if you watch the game, that all came in the fourth quarter. I mean, the
yeah,
Steelers took care of him until, eventually they just couldn't hold him back any longer, or the defense started playing more conservatively.
yeah.
I'm not sure exactly which it was, but either way, that Derrick Henry did not actually have a good game. It looks better on paper than it was. And Ben's picks, I'll even give him a little bit of leeway. I
Mhm.
think we did see a little bit more of the gunslinger Ben, kind of old school Ben that we've talked about that can get them in trouble. But at the same time, the one was tipped up straight in the air. There's nothing you can
Yeah,
do about that one.
yeah, that
The
was
the throw to Juju at the end of the game was honestly a right read. In cover
it
two,
was.
you got Juju in a seam against a linebacker.
A
You like
linebacker in trail position with his back to him. Yeah,
you like that.
yeah,
If
you
you're Ben, you like that. And you take it. Looked like triple coverage, but it truly was not. It was
yeah,
only after the ball was tipped. The other guys came around and got to be there. But that was a fine throw, fine read. The throw was not exactly on point, which Ben even talked about.
yes,
Said he should have put it more on his back shoulder where the linebacker couldn't reach it and tip it,
yeah, yeah.
which is great.
Yeah, higher throw is a Juju touchdown, no question, because Jaron Brown never turned around. And I'm going to give him credit, too. Jaron was all over the field making plays for that team.
He had a hell
Um,
of a game, man.
he did.
Whenever he got injured, Juju on that little spinning tackle, and he was down for a little bit. I kind of breathed a sigh of relief, like thank God that guy's out of the game because he's playing one hell of a game. So
Yeah.
the dude was on fire. I don't watch enough Titans to know if he plays like that week in week out, but it seems like
Oh,
they got one heck of a linebacker there.
yeah. Yeah. I liked seeing that. And, the Steelers, obviously, they played their first perfect half of the season, but on all three phases, offense, defense, special teams. Second half was more of a turnover thing to me than them changing what they were doing in the game plan, because they were still throwing the ball. They were still doing quick attacks. I mean, one was just a batted pass at the line of scrimmage early on in that drive. The last drive of the game, they held the ball for another 7 minutes. That's one of their patented clock killing drives to end the games now that they're doing this year when they have a lead. And
Absolutely.
and it happened to end with an interception in the end zone. I mean, like I'm
Yeah.
saying, he did have other options underneath, but I'm not going to fault him for his read, because like you and I both say, if you see the behind camera angle, you can only see Juju running with a linebacker with his back to you, and you're going to win
Yeah.
that ball 9 out of 10 times when you throw that
Exactly.
ball. But that's what Ben
Exactly.
saw.
Well,
But the other aspect, like we saw those numbers too that I was talking to you about earlier. And another point I want to make is the Steelers won this game on special teams.
mm,
The special teams play for the Steelers is like as good as they've been since like back when Cowher was a coach. I'm talking about your coverage teams. We're getting tackles inside the 20-yard line. We had one right there by the 10-yard line on a kickoff. Same thing with punt teams. No return. Barry, thank you, Barry, for coming back. Oh, my Lord. Two beautiful high hang time 50-yard punts that they couldn't return. So that was awesome to have him back. Sorry for Colquitt, but, man, we needed the change, and that was a big change. And then, of course, in the kicking game, Boswell was hitting his kicks, and unfortunately, Gostkowski, I mean, he hit his 50-yarder, but then he had his yips there at the last one, man, and that ended up being the difference in the game.
I like that foreshadowing on the broadcast. They said that Gostkowski's almost better from 50 yards or more. They said something like that regarding it, and I was like, I thought about that after he missed the one at the end of the game. I mean, Steelers fans obviously know him well as a kicker. He's a good kicker, man,
Yeah, he
but
is.
obviously shanked that one is not looking great in general this year for the Titans. But on the bigger point of special teams, man, these are the things that these are the little things that you can almost consider intangibles. They're not as sexy. They don't look as good on the stat sheet, but these are the things that truly separate the great teams. Like when you think about all those New England, the Patriots dynasty teams, they they just did everything so fundamentally sound on special teams. You know, Slater was always the guy going to the Pro Bowl for special teams. Like, he just led that whole unit, and and it's just, you need that. It's, if you watched the game last night too, the Monday night game, you saw the impact that a punter can have on the game. Like, Johnny Hecker was just constantly flipping the field and putting that Bears offense inside the 10. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was.
Like, when you have a good team, you know, good offensive and defensive team, the special teams can just put you over the edge. And like you said, the Steelers really do not win that game without good special teams against the Titans. So that was it. And Ray McCloud, obviously, shout out to that dude, because haven't missed a beat.
Yeah.
Deontay, replacing Deontay, who was an all-pro returner. And, you know, again, we think the world of as a returner and as a receiver. But Ray has come in and completely lived up to that standard that Deontay set, which is incredible to say. And honestly, should have scored on that one. Like, as a Steelers fan, I feel like I don't know why he cut back inside like he did, but
I thought he was going to stay wide as well, like stay to the right. If he stayed to the right, he had an easy touchdown, but
it looked that way. But
I'm glad you brought up Ray's return, because that's flipping the field in the opposite direction for the offense too, and that's another big part of the special teams as well. And just to go back to Gostkowski, he's 5 for 5 this season on kicks over 50 yards. So I don't know what's wrong with him inside of 50, but I'll take it. I'll take the win any way I can nowadays. So
you know what they should do, if they have like a 45, 46-yard attempt, just take a false start and knock him back, and then he'll make the kick every time. That's obviously what they need to do.
Yeah. So Ben this week goes out and he's throwing at least, you know, almost 50 throws that game. I jumped up on Twitter right before the game. I said, my plan to attack the game is Ben's going to spread them out and do a quick pass attack. And they hit that, because that helps them out. It slows down a quick attack defense. I even expect to see it this week against Baltimore, because Baltimore is going to try to sack. When you spread everybody out, everybody's trying to funnel in right there in the middle toward the quarterback, and you're running these plays to the outside, just completely going away from their pass rush with Ben getting that ball out in his league record leading 2.35 seconds now per pass attempt. That's something that's going to be really difficult for other teams to be able to play against, but it plays in Ben's favor now that he's comfortable. He can throw these balls a little bit quicker. 50 throws today. I mean, he's got 2 touchdowns, but his 3 interceptions, like we talked about. That first one, I went back and I watched that play too, right at the end of the half. I was hoping they'd get a field goal or go for the field goal, but when I watched the replay of that final play, they were balls in for that Hail Mary. Everybody ran a straight. So they didn't even have a chance for somebody on a comebacker, which, you know, is unfortunate for me. I'm trying to take those points. You get a quick extra 3 points right there at the end of the half, and that would have helped them out a little bit too. Made it a little tougher, and then plus with right there at the end of the game, you were playing just to kick a field goal as opposed to throwing there into the end zone to Juju, and that would have iced the game with that extra 6 points. But, you know, hindsight, it's 2020 in 2020, and that's the way we're going. But talking about the Patriots again too, Ben Roethlisberger just joined Tom Brady and Brett Favre now as the only players with 150 plus wins for a single franchise.
Yeah,
so that's 160 with Brett Favre, 219 for Brady up there in New England. So congratulations to Ben for it seems like he's hitting a different milestone every week.
Yeah, it does. It does. He's at that stage in his career.
Yeah. And this was his first interception in his last 137 pass attempts. This first one he threw, which was the longest active streak without an interception among current starting quarterbacks. So that's a big stat as well. A lot of throws between interceptions.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And then, you mentioned it, the other interception being on that Hail Mary. I mean, you could kind of make an excuse for all 3 of his picks, which is a super Yinzery homer thing to do, I understand. But at the same time, like when you evaluate the team and Ben's play in particular, that does matter. You know, he's not just making terrible errant throws, and that 3-pick stat line, just kind of like we said, how Henry's stat line was a little misleading due to the late work he got in. 3 picks is a little misleading to the game Ben played, man, because especially in the first half and particularly that very first drive, holy crap. We mentioned so many times this year about how the offense still had another level. That was it. Like the offense on that first drive was peak.
Bam.
They literally scored twice. You know, Connor scored and it gets called back, and then they just scored right again with Deontay. Like,
good point.
they were unstoppable. I mean,
Yeah.
that was the offense that, if you've listened to this show week after week, that we've said, there's still another level to this, because with that personnel, with the talent they have, that is absolutely possible. Now, you're
Yeah.
not going to have drives like that every single drive during a game. I understand that, but get used to seeing more of that, because I think the offense is only going to get better, honestly, moving forward.
And that's why the game was so lopsided so early on too, Hunter, is because your first drive that you had was a 9-minute drive. Then their second drive that they had was over 7 minutes. So they ate up and they ended up scoring into the second quarter with that Snell touchdown. I mean, when you keeping the ball out of the hands of Henry, that's how you beat Henry.
Yep,
You
exactly.
slow down the game, you ball possess, and then at the end of the game on that interception, that was another 7-minute drive. And they were clicking the whole way down the field on that one, too. It was a 3rd and 2, actually, for that interception, if my memory serves me correctly. But James Conner still had a good game, 20 rushes, which seems to be his average this season, 82 yards, no touchdowns, but could have had 2. The first one, like you said, was called back. The second one, he dropped the pass that was right in his hands. And it would have been an easy receiving touchdown, but Snell ends up getting that touchdown.
Absolutely.
The play later running the other way. And I want to talk a little bit about that play. And I have a highlight here that I'm going to be bringing up for our Facebook watchers right now, currently on Facebook Live.
Yeah. If I know you, Striker, I know why you want to show this.
Oh, I know. I'm a geek anyway on this kind of stuff. But here we go. I just brought up the screen here, and I'm going to downsize to one of us so people can see your face instead of mine. And but on this play, this is the Benny Snell touchdown. It's right there in the second 12-21 into the second quarter. And what I couldn't believe when I saw this happen is the first thing that I saw, I look on the field, I look at this guy right here. And I'm like, who the hell is number 99?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was trying to rack my brain. I'm like, who's a fullback that's 99? It's like, we called up Edmonds. Edmonds isn't 99. He doesn't have the hair for – he has hair, but he doesn't have Edmonds' hair. And I was like, this guy's way too big. And I was like, 99. I was like, Henry frickin' Mondeau.
Yes.
They called him up from the practice squad to play, and the guy ended up being a 3-phase player for the game, which is insane. It's like, why has this guy been on the team the entire time? Because he got a snap on offense. He got 7 snaps on defense. He got like 14 snaps on special teams. So they really utilized this guy in his first game as a professional, because he's been in the league for a few years bouncing around on practice squads. But I'm going to run this play and I want to watch 2 things, actually, if you can see this on the play. Your extra tackle here, which usually was Zach Banner last season, this year it's Hawkins. He sets the edge, turns the guy inside beautifully, seals the end. And then our boy Mondeau wrecks the C-gap, blowing up the linebacker and taking the defensive lineman with him. So you have a nice, easy walk-in touchdown here by Snell. Boom! I mean, after that hit, there's nobody within 5 yards of Snell, and Snell has an easy jog to that line. I like watching this again. This one shows a really good angle on Hawkins getting the turn right there, and then bam, taking out the 2 boys. Walk-in touchdown for Snell. 14-0 Steelers at that point. And for me, it was the beginning of what I thought was going to be the route, but it became quite an interesting game after that point.
It did. I mean, it looked like it was going that way. The first half was about as perfect as you could script up. And on Mondeau's block in particular, man, it was funny. My dad texted me right away and said that reminded me of Moon Mullins lead blocking for Franco Harris. He's like, I think it was the Vikings Super Bowl. So I go to YouTube right away and I found it. And dude, I tweeted it. I tweeted the clip too. Yeah. My dad, I'll tell you what, my dad might be insane, which I think he is, like, certifiably, but but his mind for 70 Steelers knowledge is as sharp as ever, because he's dead on it. It looks exactly like that. So
wow,
introduced me to Moon Mullins as well on Sunday. So that was a good learning experience for the young buck.
See, we can even get blasts from the past for Moon Mullins here on Steeler Nation. That's great, man.
I'm telling you what. And Mondeau, hey man, Mondeau, to his credit, I like not just that block, but he got a penalty, I think, on defense on the very next drive, offsides. But I loved the energy he was playing. Like, you could tell this was a guy who had spent his life on practice squads and finally got his chance and was determined not to waste it. And that's exactly what
Yep.
Mike Tomlin always talks about, that next man up, standard is the standard, all that stuff he says, Mondo embodied that. I guarantee you the coaching staff loved his game, loved what they saw from him, don't care about that penalty. Obviously want him to work on that and not do it again, but at the same time, dude was just eager and energetic. Like, he jumped the snap. He wanted to make a play. So of all things, you'll take it. And shout out to the other guy. I don't know if you had planned on talking about him, but Robert Spillane, we got to talk about a little bit as far as the next man up stuff.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead and lead with Spillane. That's fine with me.
I mean, you lose Devin Bush, and honestly, we talked about it last week. Everybody's talking about it. That was the kind of injury that was like, okay, that could be the kind of thing that derails this defense.
Yeah.
But Spillane steps in, and honestly, if you just if you're an alien just dropped from an outside country and just had a brief narrative, brief little storyline, you would never know that the Steelers were missing somebody on that defense or missing an elite middle linebacker. Spillane filled in perfect.
After that hit on the goal line to Henry, I let out a primal scream.
Dude, I literally stood up like out of the couch. Like, yeah, I mean, it sounded awesome. It looked awesome. I could tell right away though that Spillane was like kind of hurt from it. Dude, you can't win. Like, Derrick Henry, that's as hard as you can possibly hit Derrick Henry, and still Spillane took the worst of it. That's just the absolute level of tank that Henry is. Like, the dude can't even be hurt. He just hurts you if you hit him too hard. So that sucked, and it sucked to see Spillane come off the field, and obviously the Titans score right after that. But it looks like Spillane's okay, so that's good news for the Steelers. So absolutely, the hit was amazing. That was classic Steelers. I mean, that's everything you love to see in football. And clean. It was clean, better than anything else. No. Super clean, no penalty, no flags, no nothing. Yeah, I love that, man.
And that shows you can knock Henry back in the hole, but you end up hurting yourself.
You pay for it.
You pay for it.
You have to sacrifice a piece of you to make that happen.
But I had this guttural scream when it happened that surprised myself. I was just so excited to see that kind of defensive play at the goal line.
Yeah.
Just like getting to enjoy that play. And it's like, come on, 4th down. Here we go. And then, of course, he got a unfortunate grab there, clutch and grab by Fitzpatrick the next play.
Yeah.
Where I don't really feel that he had to, because he is the faster player. That guy is the taller player, but he was worried about the mismatch, I'm sure.
Sure.
And this was another one of these games, too, Hunter and Steeler Nation, because we had another game where everybody's expecting Claypool to blow it up again. And this time we went short passing attack as opposed to intermediate long passing attack. So Diontae Johnson feasted, Juju Smith-Schuster feasted, and so did Eric Ebron. So this is why this team is so tough to defend. While you have Washington and Claypool both with a target each, though like Claypool had 2 penalties that were caught against some of his targets. So they came off the board, one being that pass interference that he drew. But this is how the Steelers are going to be the toughest team to go up against, because it's like going up against those Patriots teams again that we were talking about earlier. You had all those tiny, shifty guys that you just couldn't stop one-on-one for a long enough time to make a difference, even though their edge receivers sucked. Yeah. They never had really great, aside from when they had Moss. Moss was amazing.
Sure.
But outside of that, the Steelers are similar to that with better edge receivers. So that makes it very, very difficult for a defense. You have to be blue chippers across the board to be able to defend this team from being able to make these quick pass catches and then making the people miss right after. So it was amazing to watch.
It really is. I mean, it's super pick your poison. I mean, you've got Ebron at tight end who's showing that he can be relied upon, making some clutch catches last week and obviously having a good week a couple weeks ago. But of those 4 top receivers, Juju, Diontae, Claypool, Washington, which of those guys do you not trust? Because personally, I trust any of those 4 to go make a play. Totally awesome, reliable receivers. Like the choices the Steelers have, and they're showing that they don't care. They don't care that Juju is technically number 1 or Diontae is technically whatever it is. There's no numbers. There's no A, B, C, D. It's just 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, and whatever the matchup dictates, they're going to take it and they're going to exploit it. No team in the NFL can guard 4 receivers of that kind. Like one of them is going to eat every week.
And you're throwing in Ebron too in that mix.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's exactly. It was funny to hear the way I never heard it until we had Joe Thomas on the show when he mentioned that like 4 B-level receivers is so much harder to deal with than 1 A+ and then some C's and D's. It makes perfect sense, and that's exactly what the Steelers have, even though I think Deontay and Juju are probably A's, and Claypool's going to be an A as well. But that said, the Steelers definitely have, this lineup of where they just don't care, and they're all good. It's indefensible. There's nothing you can do to stop that. So some receivers going to eat every week, and if from a fantasy football perspective or whatever, I trust Deontay the most week to week. He just seems to be getting the most targets and kind of reliable as far as just getting his receptions and the yards after the catch. Obviously, he's amazing at. So Deontay would be the guy for me that I see as kind of the leader. But at the same time, I really don't think there's a leader, and I don't think the Steelers care.
Yeah, and Pittsburgh now has scored 26 points in each game this season. I mean, we were always waiting for the Steeler teams. Remember when we had the Killer Bees? We're like, oh, we're going to go out and throw up 30 points a game. And that's what we had, 30 points a game, 30 points a game. And we rarely threw up 30 points a game. We are now finally averaging over 30 points a game. And that is
crazy.
So fun. A big part, too, being that killing the time of possession. We are at 36 minutes for time of possession on the season. And also third down efficiency, 13 for 18. That last game was immense.
Exactly.
Keeps those drives going, brings up points on the board. So let's flip it over and talk some more defense too. They held the Titans under 300 yards for this past game. That's 210 passing, 82 rushing.
Yeah.
That is taking into account they had 607 yards last week against Houston. And you're right, they are the most complete team, Josh, right there on Twitter, shooting up there. And they held them on their third down count, 5 for 13 on third downs, 0 for 1 on fourth, which was their muff punt, unfortunately. That was more on them than them attempting to try to get a first down. But what a great game to watch. I mean, Vince Williams, 10 tackles, 1 sack, 2 TFLs. Hayden, 7 tackles, pass defense, the TFL. Watt, of course, his usual self, 5 tackles, 3 were behind the line of scrimmage, 1 a sack. Cameron Sutton showing up for my boy, Mike Hilton, who's one of my favorite players. 2 passes defense, 4 tackles. He really filled in well, too.
Next man up was Sutton filling in for Hilton once again. I mean, there was no drop-off. That's what's been amazing to see. You could even trace it the whole way back to preseason, losing Hargrave and Alualu stepping up, next man up. It seems like no matter who they lose, they're just replacing them this year. Obviously, you don't want to see Ben go down again and take that route and see if they can extend the ultimate next man up with Mason. Yeah. But, you don't want to see that. But otherwise, they're filling in beautifully. And with the Titans game in particular, it's everything we said in the lead up and everything that you've heard from national pundits and everything. The Titans are an offensive team this year for sure. I mean, they make their money on the offensive side. They're not the defensive Titans of years past anymore. So for the Steelers defense to hold that team to what they did, it was pretty incredible. And it really, again, it wasn't until late that the Titans really started getting rolling at all. And you take that A.J. Brown catch and run 73-yard touchdown, you take that out of the equation, and who knows really what they gave up. So it was really one super splashy play and then just some late game kind of garbage time points.
The Steelers are showing you this season one receiver isn't going to kill you.
No.
I think in pretty much every single game they've had close to 100-yard or over 100-yard receiver with a touchdown.
They're just okay with that, it seems.
Yeah, but what they're doing, going back to the Patriots, this team is Patriots-esque. They are going into games to take down your number one guy, and they managed Derrick Henry as well as they possibly could. 75 yards. That offense gets an assist, like we're saying. They possessed that entire first quarter. So his 75 yards was in 3 quarters of action.
Yeah, right.
But totally, he had 72 total yards because he was -3 on his pass attempts that they tried to get to him because Steelers were running spies on his screen attempts. Mm-hmm. So those screens never got going. They blew up before they happened, and that's something that I haven't really seen in a long time. The Steeler game not being all full throttle on that attack that quarterback and having a smart guy being like, oh, I'm seeing the back switch out. I'm going to shoot down the line of scrimmage, sneak behind the backs, hit him in the backfield, no game or a loss.
I mean, it was crazy. The attention they gave to him in general was amazing. And one quick thing on A.J. Brown I wanted to mention, kind of funny side note, is if this game had happened when it was originally scheduled, A.J. Brown wouldn't have played. He was still nursing an injury at that point. So So think about if the game happened on schedule, it probably would have been an even a bigger blowout for the Steelers. But you saw what kind of impact A.J. Brown can have on that team. And I was happy to hear Tomlin mentioned it actually in his press conference today, saying that when they originally scouted the Titans, he wasn't part of the scouting report because he wasn't going to play. So they feel like maybe they didn't give him proper attention in the lead up. So kind of explains maybe why he did what he did. And look, it wasn't just that one touchdown. He was great all game. He's a great receiver. So by all means, I mean, it sucks in a way, like hearing Tomlin say that was kind of weird. It was like, how could you forget to re-scout their number one receiver or whatever? But at the same time, it does explain a little bit that they weren't expecting to play him. Yeah, but
and he was banged up the previous week too. They weren't sure if he was going to play. So.
Exactly. So there is that, but overall, dude, you can't be. I was really surprised and impressed at how big of a factor TJ was in stopping the run. It seemed like he was constantly coming off the edge and just kind of getting to flanking Henry in a way, like just getting him on the blind side, just dragging him down. He was a huge part of that. So TJ Watt, obviously you think of as an elite pass rusher, which he is, but it was funny to see those same pass rushing principles apply to stopping the run.
Yeah, he's an elite defender. I mean,
I think that's what he is at this point. Yeah.
He was a defensive player of the year candidate last year. He's going to be again this year. The guy just makes – and that's the thing. Like, everybody gets caught up on those flashy sack numbers or big interceptions for a cornerback that knows the plays that are coming because they've got the signals from the other team. But other than that, I'm always going to take a shot at the Patriots.
I was going to say, you can never resist that one.
Because I thought that should have been TJ Watt's first. Because of the amount of plays he made last year. But he's still right on track. He's still doing it again this year. And he still hasn't had like a really blowout game. Like, he's just constantly making plays every game. Like last year, he had a couple games where he's just like insane.
Exactly.
Huge plays, multiple turnovers. And
that was towards – it was
for that too.
Last year, it was more towards the end of the year, if my memory serves me, when he really started putting up those games. So it could be as offense is getting a little more worn down or him just hitting his stride. I'm anxious to see – if he hits another level at the end of this season, it's going to be special for sure. Yeah. And I want to get to Anthony had a question a little while ago here on Facebook.
Anthony, how you doing, Anthony?
Our dude,
always good
Anthony,
to see you every week, Anthony, on Facebook.
Always asking super smart questions too, which is awesome.
That's why we love him.
Yeah. He says, do you see other defenses noticing that a quick pass is coming, so that causes a possibility of more tipped passes? I mean, I'll take it just because I think that's obviously, yes, we see it. Ben's getting a lot of passes tipped. I think the Browns game was the most blatant example when Ben was trying to hit a couple of those quick slants and they just had their hands all over it to tip it, potentially get a pick. And then obviously last week you see the tip actually resulting in a pick. So that's something that defenses are noticing. It's something that I find funny. I saw some tweets to the effect of Ben Roethlisberger's 6'5". How is he getting passes tipped? And I'm just thinking to myself, how tall do you think defensive linemen are? Like, they're the same height. They're big dudes. Right. And then you put your arm up. Now you're 7'7". Like Ben isn't that tall, whatever.
Well, he's not Baker Mayfield or Drew Brees having to throw over those hands all the time. But Ben's a line thrower with that big arm. I mean, he's throwing it at that level. And I'll take another point too about that pass rush there, Anthony. And sometimes tip balls are a byproduct of your coaching style for rushing the quarterback. Vrabel is their head coach. Nobody was better at sitting in the passing lanes and getting a mitt up than Vrabel. And he did it constantly for the Patriots. Did it with the Steelers when he was on the Steelers when we drafted him as well. He's a smart guy, and he has his defensive line coached. We know this guy's going to get the ball out of his hands quickly. If you see him cock up, get that hand in the air. And there was a lot of tips in that game. There were like 4 tips, I think, in that game from the defensive line. Like, one was an interception. One could have been an interception.
Yeah.
And then 2 would knocked the other ways. But, I mean, it's more, for me, it's more of a coaching emphasis because sometimes when you have a team that's just all about rushing the passer, they're not going to get their hands up. And the coach is really the difference that makes sure you get those hands up in the passing lane when that pass is going to be delivered and you're not going to get to that quarterback. You got to separate and get that hand up and try to get a piece of that ball. And so kudos to the coaching and kudos to recognizing the type of game that they were going to have, understanding that Ben is no longer that stand in the pocket all day type of quarterback. He's a drop back, bang type of quarterback now.
And that said, that's now been effective for teams facing the Steelers 2 weeks in a row. So you better believe like the Ravens are paying attention. Every team from now on is paying attention to that and probably going to implement that. So now it's up to the Steelers. Maybe some more pump fakes from Ben. I'm not sure what you're going to see exactly, but it didn't sink them against the Titans, but it was a problem for me. I would definitely consider that a problem in that game.
Yeah.
Resulted in a pick, resulted in a couple more incompletions. It's something they're going to have to work on if it keeps happening, and I would imagine it keeps happening because now the blueprint is out there, so to speak.
Yeah, good call. Now it's time for game balls. I want to lead with the game ball on offense. I'll let you lead on defense. You got it?
All right. Let's do that.
My game ball on offense is going to be the offensive line.
That's a lot of balls. That's a lot of game balls.
It goes to the whole offensive line, including Hawkins, who came in to set that beautiful edge on that Snell touchdown. He's doing an excellent job with the unbalanced attack. And just, you got to think about it. The run blocking was excellent, especially in the first half when we had to keep control of the ball, keep the sticks moving. And also, biggest one, 0 sacks. Zero sacks
huge.
On the day. And
Huge.
For an old quarterback like Big Ben, we got to take care of him. That's the easiest way, and the best way to take care of him is making sure he's not getting hit a lot when he drops back to pass.
Yep. And we knew ahead of time, when we scouted the Titans and talked about them last week, they didn't get to the quarterbacks very often. Their pass rush wasn't very good. But at the same time, that's okay, if you're facing a team that doesn't have a good pass rush, hold them to 0 then.
Yes.
Because that's what you should do, and that's exactly what the Steelers did. Their offensive line's been great all year, and sticking with I guess today's theme is next man up, because maybe the offensive line embodies that the best of any position group. As Zach Banner goes down, Chuk steps in, DeCastro goes down, Dotson steps in. That unit has been rock solid all year. And Villanueva had a lot of fans worried last year with his performance, particularly towards the end of the year, slipping off. He's been back. He's been back to his form that you would expect. Has not been an issue at all. So the whole offensive line is looking great, and they're going to need it. Keep Ben upright, keep him healthy, let him make plays. So that's a good game ball, man. There's no doubt about that. I'll go somewhere else on offense. I'll take our guy Deontay, because obviously he showed out 2 touchdowns, could have had a third. That was the game that we needed to see from him, not just because they needed the points, obviously, but to let everybody know that his injuries are not exactly a problem, that he wasn't hindered by his injuries. He was obviously 100% healthy until late in that game when he got banged up again, which is just, it's so unfortunate for the dude, man. He just can't, the flip pass, if you're watching on Facebook.
Yeah.
Roethlisberger's
highlights now on Facebook. That flip pass. when Ben Roethlisberger was running backwards, going to get sacked, and he kind of did one of those shovel passes with his. Did he do it with his left hand too?
I think it was his right hand still.
Okay, so his right hand,
but still.
To get to Ebron and actually get some yardage out of a play that could have been a big loss.
That was the most Ben thing ever. Like, that was when you say vintage Ben, that's exactly what you talk about. That was just beautiful to see.
Yeah, but great to see DJ being that much of that big a part of the offense, also coming off the injury, missing another game, still getting banged up, but coming back into the game and finishing the game as well. So he's ready to go for next week. Same thing too on defense. Then who's your defensive game ball?
So this could go a couple ways, I think. So I'll say first, like, it's not Terrell Edmunds, but it probably could be Terrell Edmunds.
He had an excellent game.
Excellent game, and excellent couple games now in a row where he's just kind of coming into his own, it seems like.
Yeah.
He's getting his hands on the ball a little bit. He had a pick six that could have been but wasn't in this one.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff, like, he's getting there. I think you're seeing the maturation in his game, kind of like Bud Dupree, where everybody was so sure he was a bust or never going to live up to it. Then it just slowly started coming together. It takes longer for some guys, especially when you have to play as much as Edmunds did early on in his career. He got thrown right into the fire. Like, never forget how many snaps that dude had to play as a rookie. So he's still figuring it out, and I think we're starting to really see some nice evolution in his game. But not my game ball this week, Terrell. That is for Vince Williams.
Yes.
Which, we talked about him earlier, so I'm not going to rehash all of that. But for obvious reasons, Vince has been – that was – if you're watching, that was the one play that obviously should have been picked off. But Vince has been great.
And they ended up getting a first down on that play.
Yes.
On third down and long.
On third down, yeah, exactly.
That was their first touchdown drive. They were aided by a bouncing ball.
Right.
So they had the bounces.
So shout out Vince. Everybody had questioned his coverage and his ability to be an every down linebacker, but that's exactly what he is this year, and he's showing out. The tackles for a loss, the way he's able to blitz and hit people behind the line of scrimmage is absolutely ridiculous. As far as middle linebackers go, he's one of the best blitzing middle linebackers I ever
Yeah.
remember seeing as a
Yep.
Steelers fan, honestly. The dude just has a nose for that, a knack for that. So it's cool to see him get the reps and finally be able to put up some of those volume stats that you look for. So shout out Vince Williams, definitely earned that game ball this week.
And my defensive game ball is going to go to TJ Watt, setting the tone, big plays in the backfield, getting another sack, splitting the defense to get Hunter or Henry in the backfield before he can even get moving. And that was just another excellent game put together by now the intimidating factor that is known as TJ Watt.
Yeah.
And even, I mean, heck, we can give out game balls on special teams today, too. Hell, you got Ray, you got Barry coming in, helping us out in the punting game. I mean,
absolutely,
this is just nice to see all around. I mean, they did an excellent job. So injury-wise, we've got a couple injuries that I just want to update everybody on. Derek Watt and Mike Hilton are still supposed to be making their way back to practice this week, according to the presser today by Tomlin. Deontay Johnson isn't an issue. Robert Spillane isn't an issue. Chukwuma Okorafor as well. He went out for a couple plays. He's not an issue. All three of those guys returned to finish the game, so that's why they're not an issue. But Chris Wormley hurt his knee. They're checking him. They're giving him an MRI today. So we'll know a little bit more this week what's going to happen with him. But if he's getting an MRI, there's something wrong in his knee. And Dangerfield also has a quad injury, but Tomlin was saying he's probably going to be practicing this week.
Yep. Yeah, all things considered, once again, the Steelers get out pretty free on the injury report. You know, this isn't that bad for this late in the season. Obviously, already lost Devin Bush for the year, so that's a huge hit that's going to linger. But other than that, they've been very fortunate this year. You know, Banner being the other one going down for the year, but they had Chooks backing him up. And so far, Spillane looks very good in backup. So they're avoiding calamity with these season-ending injuries so far. So it's nice to see another relatively healthy slate, especially, you know, Deontay, kind of worry about him with how they're piling up, but it sounds like he's ready to roll. It's going to make their life a lot easier against the Ravens. Well, it's not going to be easy against the Ravens ever, but it's going to help.
And Stefan Wisniewski giving an update on that as well. Tomlin did not address it. He got his first practice back on the 16th. Evidently, he's working in some capacity, but he has to be signed to the roster by November 4th, which is a week from today or tomorrow. And if he's not, he won't be a Steeler, or he'll be on injured reserve for the rest of the season if he's not rostered. So he might be a surprise roster this week. If not, expect him to be rostered at the beginning for Wednesday next week, starting up for practice.
There you go.
Now we're going on to this upcoming week. We got the battle for the AFC North, the 6-0 Steelers going to 5-1 Baltimore. Are the Steelers elite? I mean, you've got Pittsburgh with the number 3 offense, number 3 defense in the AFC, while Baltimore has the number 4 offense and number 2 defense in the AFC.
Yeah.
I mean, reviewing the history of this rivalry, I mean, you can date back to 2001 when the Ravens and Steelers really began, but they played. I mean, they've. This is going to be an evenly matched matchup.
I mean, absolutely. It's this. You know, last week the Titans game was seen as battle of undefeateds. You know, 2 of the top teams in the AFC. But I honestly think the Ravens are better than the Titans this year, and this is an even better matchup. I think this is a more high-level matchup all across the board. You just mentioned already some of the Ravens' stats. It's funny because last year they were such an offense-heavy team with Lamar winning MVP and setting all kinds of crazy records and just doing crazy stuff.
Yeah.
This year the Ravens are back to being that defense-first foundational team and just going to run the ball. They still run the ball like crazy with Lamar and their 3-headed little monster running backs there, but what's funny is that last year the Steelers played Lamar Jackson as well as any team, better than any team, literally.
Yeah, that was the Duck and Rudolph show where they both played the game. Yeah, Rudolph,
exactly.
Duck came in to finish and they got to overtime. Yeah,
exactly. So the Ravens are going to have to adjust, and obviously Lamar isn't the same player he was a year ago. They've made adjustments on that side of the ball, but at the same time, the Steelers clearly had him figured out last year. So we'll see if that carries over this year. Losing Devin Bush, you know, we talked about it last year. I think it hurts more this week because that's the guy that you would want spying Jackson, helping keep an eye on Jackson with his speed and his sideline-to-sideline abilities. he was an asset in containing Lamar Jackson. So we'll see without him how they do. But it's funny, dude, Lamar Jackson literally leads the Ravens in rushing attempts. He has 50. So it's just it's the same thing. And then Ingram, Gus Edwards, and J.K. Dobbins obviously are next up. But Ingram's been banged up a little bit. Ingram, Edwards, and Dobbins have not been great just from a statistical perspective on their own. But it's kind of like the sum is greater than the parts. You know, it adds up to a much better result for the Ravens than they are individually. So the sum total of their backfield is tough to deal with. When you throw in Lamar with it, always has the ability to just take it to the house. So they're an interesting team offensively again this year, but their receivers are literally last in like every major category. They have almost no receivers.
And that's why too. I think the league has started to figure out Lamar Jackson, and that is make him a runner, and or try to stop him from running the ball and try to have him beat you by throwing the ball.
Yeah.
So, as we kind of all figured out after I'm watching the quarterback challenge attack last year for the Pro Bowl, when he hit 0 points on
that was crazy.
for 0 targets, where they also had 2 wide receivers throwing. Actually, no, he hit 1 target. That's right. But they had 2 wide receivers, which were non-quarterbacks, doing the same challenge, and he still came in last behind the wide receivers.
Yeah.
So this is a guy that is not as accurate as everybody wants to believe he is. When he jumped on the scene, that dynamic style of play nobody had seen before, but it's on film. Kansas City put it on film, and they put on a clinic when they played them on Monday night in Baltimore. Yep. They said, hey, we're going to make him throw the ball, and because we're going to stop the run. We're just going to line up and stop the run. And that's a tougher play for Lamar Jackson to have to beat you with his arm as opposed to his legs.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, like we said, the receivers are literally last in the NFL in most major categories. It's Marquise Brown, and then who knows after that? Hollywood Brown, Willie Snead, Devin Duvernay. It's a bunch of underachieving players at this point, but they just signed Des Bryant, striker, to their practice squad. So if Des Bryant came with a time machine to 2013 and 14, it's a good pick. But I'm dubious of Bryant literally tried out for them, I think, in August and got sent home. They said his conditioning wasn't good enough. They said, go work on your conditioning, basically. So now he came back, obviously upped his conditioning. But if your conditioning wasn't on point in August and you've already been out of the league for 2 years, haven't played for 3 years, you're getting up there in age, man, I just don't see that being remotely the Des Bryant that some Ravens fans, I'm sure, are hoping it is. He's not Des Bryant from Pro Bowl 2013-14 seasons anymore. I guarantee you that. I would not be super excited about that. I don't see that as a huge deal. He's obviously a huge name, and I actually like Des Bryant a lot. Like when he was with the Cowboys, he's one of my favorite receivers to watch. I like his style. He was super smart. He was way craftier than I think he got credit for. But I think his body's going to fail him. He's not going to be the same guy that he was back then. So while their receivers are lacking, they do have one of the best tight ends in the league with Mark Andrews, and he has 5 touchdowns. Whenever they get in the red zone, that's Lamar's guy. He's the touchdown threat. He's the guy Lamar looks to punch it in. So they'll definitely have to keep an eye on Mark Andrews, but otherwise it's like you said, the key to them selling out against the run completely. Just stuff the run. Let them know early the run isn't going to work. Force him to pass and go from there. And also the offense has to put up points. So you want to get the Ravens to have to play from behind so they feel that they do have to pass a little more. So that's going to be really the dynamic here is can the offense score and then can they shut down the run? If they do those 2 things, obviously it's going to be a good day for the Steelers again.
Yeah, and then conversely, on the other side of the ball, you have the Steelers' offensive line needs to step up again because now we're going to be playing probably the best pass rush that we're going to see this year. We get to see them twice. So it's a big test because they get a lot of sacks from a lot of different places. It's not just one guy, though. They just signed a new guy, too, a big sack guy, the guy out of Minnesota. In Doc White, what's his name?
Yeah, I don't know how to say it. I know who you're talking about.
Either, but he has 5 sacks on the season already, so that brings a feast guy into a defense that already has a lot of sacks.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
They're trying to keep up with the Steelers to have such a disruptive defense, keeping their opposing quarterbacks on a quick timer that, we're going to have to see how this works. But the one thing that I like about this matchup as well is the new Ben Roethlisberger. He is now the quick Ben Roethlisberger. He's getting that ball out a lot faster than he did. So I think he will hit the ground at times this past game, but I don't think he's going to be hitting the ground as much as the Ravens are used to putting people on the ground.
I agree with that. And their defense is definitely dynamic this year. You kind of pointed to it that they're getting it from a lot of different places. And a huge reason for that is Marlon Humphrey, man. And I know Steelers fans are going to have a hard time giving a Ravens player credit, but this dude, he's one of the best defensive backs in the game. And he's not just a coverage corner. He's not just, the forced fumble guy. He leads the team in forced fumble with 4.
Wow.
And Steelers fans know from last year, and he's the guy who punched it out from Juju in that overtime loss. So Marlon Humphrey's an asset. He also is second on the team in sacks with 2.5. So they use him to blitz. They use him to cover. He is the splashiest guy on that defense for sure. And now the rookie, Patrick Queen, I know a lot of Steelers fans liked him too. Maybe reminded them of Devin Bush or Devin White a little bit in his sideline-to-sideline kind of speed abilities. Patrick Queen has been 100% as advertised. He's having a phenomenal season, probably in the conversation for Defensive Rookie of the Year. So he's showing up. They've got those guys. They still got Calais Campbell on the defensive line. Everybody knows what he can do. They got L.J. Fort, old familiar.
I know, good old L.J.
Fort. And he's playing the best football of his life as well. So
yes, he is.
By all means, they're a really good team. Marcus Peters, obviously, I've always been higher on Marcus Peters than most people. I think I really respect his nose for the ball. The dude just has a knack for scoping the ball, hawking it, making picks. So I've always liked Marcus Peters' game. And then you combine him with Marlon Humphrey and their 2 safeties, man.
Yeah.
They're a great secondary, a great defense in general. It's going to be tough sailing. This is not the Titans defense this week.
Yeah. And then now we're at the time of the broadcast where we do questions from Steeler Nation from our home site at SteelerNation.com, our forum, our football forum. We take great questions from great football minds on the forum. And I'm going to lead with Hoot again. He's going to start off. He says, offense this year is being more horizontal concepts than vertical, reliance on the quick pass and catch, then let the backs and receivers make the plays up is effective and keeps Ben upright. Ben has gotten the ball out faster than anybody else this year per next generation stats. Certainly down the road, this will open up deeper balls. Anyway, I would like to hear your thoughts on this change of offensive philosophy and if we think it is Matt Canada's influence or other thoughts that we have on that. Do you want to lead with that or do you want me to lead?
Sure, I'll take it. That's cool. I think, whenever you ask a question like that and say, is it this, I always think the answer is that it's a little bit of everything. I'm sure Canada is having an impact on that. You've seen a lot of the jet sweeps and some of the motion that you'd be familiar with from Canada. So that definitely is playing into it. I think the personnel is playing into it a lot too. These are things that Juju has always worked well out of the slot, and he's shown a great ability for yards after the catch this year. Deontay Johnson, that's obviously his game through and through. Claypool being a more vertical kind of guy, and we've seen that from him. But otherwise, this is more kind of the personnel they have. And in Ben's return, I think his arm, I feel like his deep ball struggles are overstated at this point. He's proven that. But I do think that there was something to it, especially early on, just getting him some quick dink and dunks, build some chemistry, build some confidence, just gain yards. But also, for so many years as a Steelers fan, they would, match up against Tom Brady, for instance, and he would just totally dice them with these horizontal plays, dink and dunk. I think the Steelers just finally realized that a 5-yard pass is just as good as a 5-yard run, and maybe more high percentage, maybe easier to execute. So I think it's more of an overall philosophy shift that we're seeing, and it's obviously benefiting the offense. Like we said earlier, you're not getting the guy who is clearly, putting up A-B numbers, but you're getting 4 guys who are putting up, B-level numbers, and the total, once again, is just way better than the parts. So we're seeing a more polished offense overall, and a lot of credit to that change in philosophy.
And for me, for Canada specifically, what I'm seeing the difference with Canada is all the pre-snap movement. And that's more pre-snap movement than we are normally utilizing ever. Also, I love how he reuses the same plays out of the same base concepts. So we have that play where we always have that receiver coming around the end around. So we don't know if the receiver's going to get the ball or if they're just going to hand it off and come straight up the middle with Connor, because they do both out of the same set. So as a defense, it's kind of hard to defend because it's like a pre-snap RPO, because if you're doing your game film, it looks exactly the same. So you don't know if it's a run, you don't know if it's a pass. And that's pre-snap. Whereas the RPO, it's like you have the ball in the gut of the running back, and it's like, oh, is he going to leave it in the gut in the running back, or is he going to pull it out? Right. So I think that aspect of the of not knowing whether to run or pass fits Ben's game better than as opposed to being an actual RPO quarterback.
Absolutely. And it's super interesting because you've seen it already with Claypool running that sweep. Is like if you hesitate for even a split second on that, he's going to beat you to the edge and the play is going to be successful. So it's amazing to see the level of confusion they can cause with that and the results of that confusion.
I got a question here from Steel Buckeye. He also says, the Ravens have one of the top scoring defenses in the NFL. Is that a product of their weak schedule? And for me, I have to say it is always difficult to create turnovers in the NFL. It's not something you can ever plan on as a defense, but their defense has always been a point of emphasis to go and get the football. And that starts with their 2000 Super Bowl team. They're always play the football, get your hands up, get your hands on the ball, and take it back the other way and help your team out with scoring. So this has been part of their identity since they started winning Super Bowls in 2000.
Yeah, and you saw me laugh as you were reading it. Like these weak schedule questions are just goofy to me because it's the NFL and every team is very good. Like every team can do good things. I'm looking at the Ravens schedule. You know, the Browns, that's a good offense in my opinion. The Texans.
The Browns always play them well too.
Right. The Texans, that's a good offense. Chiefs, obviously. Okay, that one goes without saying. Washington, okay, there's the first team that is actually a pretty weak offense in my mind. Bengals, I'll tell you what, Bengals offense looks good. That's not the problem. They're putting up points and yards. They're doing fine with Burrow. The Eagles, weakish offense. But that's not why their defense, the Ravens defense is looking so good. They look so good because they're a great defense. It's great coaching, great personnel, great execution. They're just a good defense again. It really has little to do with the teams. I think the Steelers will see that this week. You'll see a little more struggle on the offensive side of the ball than we've seen recently out of the Steelers when they just look like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not a perfect defense either. And just like the Steelers, you know, it's kind of the same level. And we've seen teams find ways to be successful against the Steelers defense as well. That's just where the league is at this year with an offensive-driven team and all the talent that you have on offense. It's going to happen. Like even the best defense is going to get points put up on it, yards put up on it. So they're a great defense, but not an impossible to defeat. So defense.
Black and Gold Bleeder asks us, on the road versus the Titans, we won the toss and took the ball to start the game. Will we do the same thing versus the Ravens on the road if we win the toss? And for my perspective, just from what I viewed, and this is even going back when I saw Tomlin on I think it was a Monday night game in Washington. He came out and actually, I think he lost the toss, but he went for the onside kick for the first kick of the game. Tomlin on the road likes to set the tone with his offense because if you get that quick score and get a lead, it quiets the crowd. I mean, obviously we don't have a huge crowd. Baltimore is going to have their first crowd this week. It's going to be 4,000 people and change. So at least there's going to be some hopefully some yins are spinning some towels, but we're going to have some Baltimore Horns over there too going downtown to watch our team play damn Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm from Baltimore area. I got their dialect down perfectly. So to me, that's just something that Tomlin likes to do on the road is try to set the tone with the offense, get up quickly so it takes the crowd out of the game.
Yeah. Makes sense, man. I mean, I got nothing to follow up with that. I don't know what they're going to do, sir. Yeah. If I knew what they would choose, I would, go place a bet on. I'm sure there's somewhere you can bet on that thing. But I would like to see the offense take it and just put the pressure on Lamar and company to respond. Go out if they can dial up something like they did last week, obviously against the Titans. That's a ideal way to start the game, I guess you could say.
Yeah, right. And Heinz57 asks us, the focus has to be on the RPO offense and how the defense can keep from giving up big runs and also defend against the pass option in the middle of the field. The Rats love throwing to tight ends, and this is a game where we will first notice Bush is not on the field. Yeah. Do they drop Edmonds down to play man on the tight end in this game? I'll let you lead that one, Hunter.
Yeah, well, we've seen them doing that already. Even when Bush was there and immediately in Bush's absence, we've seen them doing that. Edmonds, like I said earlier when I was considering him for the game ball, he's doing stuff that you don't necessarily see show up on the stat sheet, but he's playing his roles extremely well and looking very good. So I do definitely think that is something you're going to see this week with Edmonds. So, yes, to answer your question, yes, I see that happening with Edmonds, him being that guy to help out with those tight ends that they love so much, particularly Andrews, particularly in the red zone.
Yeah, and to beat an RPO, you have to be gap sound. You have to have everybody working together on defense. That they might be using Bud Dupree again to spy a little bit more, like they did last week, and he might be a Lamar spy as opposed to being the Henry spy that he was last week. And we know he can run with them because I've seen Bud Dupree track down Lamar from behind before. So, that'll be interesting to see in that aspect. But I don't think it's just going to be Edmonds. It's going to be Edmonds working with Fitzgerald, working with Sutton/Hilton. Spilly's going to be in there too. Vince, all those guys in the middle are going to be breaking down to take out that tight end. And that's been working because the past couple weeks, past like 3 or 4 weeks, Steelers have completely nullified the tight end. And I think going into this game, that is the player you have to stop first, other than Lamar Jackson, is Andrews.
Absolutely.
Andrews is their receiving threat. He is the guy that's going to be getting that play action ball. So Steelers going in hard, making sure that they're gap sound against the run game, and that will filter out if they're bracketing Andrews behind it. It's going to be a really tough game for Lamar to get the ball down the field.
Yep, absolutely.
Drink Iron City, we know him. He always gives us a couple here at the end.
Guy.
He says, I think the Steelers have beaten the Ravens 3 times in one season. How significant is that, and how often does it happen in the NFL through other teams? I don't know how it happens through the NFL for other teams, but I did look up for this since I knew we were going to get this question. 94 and 02, we beat Cleveland Browns 3 times in a season. 08, we beat the Ravens 3 times in a season, and I think in 14 as well. And then, but here's an interesting contrast. In 1989, Houston Oilers swept us in the regular season, and we beat them in the playoffs.
Ooh.
So the crazy thing about the Steelers, though, is they rarely lose to division opponents in the playoffs. And to me, it's like if you're playing a team 3 times, you know what works, and you can defend accordingly because you know what works. Steelers have only lost once to a team in the playoffs, and that was the 14 Ravens. They lost. That was the only divisional opponent they've ever lost to in the playoffs was in 2014. I almost said 1914.
Also, yes.
You know me and my brain, it works.
Get my air horn ready for you.
Yeah, so for me, it's more knowing how comfortable you are with attacking those defenses and those other teams for playing them so often. So I think that's more of an advantage seeing a team that you play 2 other times than when you got to face them a 3rd time in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'll just let you handle that one, Stray. I got nothing to add. You clearly did your research. The only thing I guess I will add is that the playoffs, as weird as it is, it's not always the best team. It's the healthiest team. So I think when you look at, even if they beat the Ravens twice in the regular season, or vice versa, the Ravens beat them twice, but Lamar isn't available in the playoffs for whatever reason, or something like Patrick Queen gets hurt, can't play in the playoffs, that obviously changes everything. If it's the same teams going up against each other, then maybe it carries more weight, more validity that way. But ultimately, it will depend what team is healthier, better rested in the playoffs. I think that matters a lot more than in that, elimination format.
Then Drink Iron City also asks, who is the comeback player of the year conversation, and is Roethlisberger a leading candidate at this point in the season? I'll let you lead with this one.
Well, I don't know. I'm not a betting guy. I don't actually follow the odds, but he has to be, right? It has to be Ben. He has to be leading it. I know Cam Newton was the guy early on that was leading it, but he's obviously completely fallen off a cliff as the season drags on. He looks terrible, especially in the last game. He's awful. Yeah. But I don't know. So let me, I'm just going to look it up, at the odds.
You got a couple more players that are in on it. Gronkowski's one of those people with high odds, and so is J.J. Watt. So it was Cam Newton, Gronk, J.J. Watt. Basically, the only person that you heard about it was Cam Newton in the first couple weeks.
Yeah.
Because they got off to a hot start. But Steelers now 6-0. Conversation's going to come back to Pittsburgh. And when it comes down to comeback player of the year, if you're a quarterback, you've got a big chance. I guess Alex Smith would be another big option too, since he records.
As well. That's a great kind of storybook option for sure. I like that pick. And I know Aldon Smith as well, I think has 4 sacks or something I saw. Everybody forgot about him. Dude, he was one of the most prolific pass rushers of all time out the gate. Like the dude was unreal, but obviously had a lot of off the field issues. So it's nice to see him come back and be a solid player again. So he's got to be in the conversation as well. But yeah, I'm just looking at the odds here, and you're right. It's Roethlisberger and Gronk are tied right now at plus 350.
Okay.
Most likely, and then Cam Newton somehow is still third. J.J. Watt, Matt Stafford, A.J. Green, Alex Smith. So you go down the list, it just becomes less and less likely. It's got to be Ben at the top of that. I don't care. Gronk, sure, Tampa Bay's doing well. Gronk's catching touchdowns again, but he's not leading his team. He's not a quarterback that had elbow surgery. Yeah. Come on, that's
replacing 3 of your 5 elbow tendons.
It's a way cooler.
Yeah,
way cooler comeback, way bigger, and Ben's undefeated. Gronk isn't. So there
awesome. You go. Last question there from DIC. Bud Dupree or Juju, either player has depth as a backup, and which one of their departures would be less felt? I'll let you start.
Wow. That's an interesting question.
I think this is the next year question. If we lose Bud Dupree or Juju, which one's going to be the harder loss on the Steelers?
I think losing Bud would hurt the Steelers more than Juju. However, I could also convince myself that losing Juju would hurt more. Like, honestly, I can see the argument perfectly both ways.
It's going to be a tough offseason.
Okay, let's just take this particular episode as the perfect example. How many times did we mention the Steelers being 4 deep at receiver being so valuable, and include Ebron on that, 5 deep at receiver being so valuable? So you take one guy out, that affects everything. Then now that's more stress on Deontay. What if Deontay goes down to injury again? Well, now you've got 2 receivers left. Like, Juju is huge. You don't want to lose Juju. I understand that he's not putting up the numbers that he did, in his rookie year and sophomore year, but he doesn't have to. His role on the team this year is equally valuable as it was back then. And, I mean, you're seeing the team win more, obviously, this year. So you don't want to lose Juju, but at the same time, the reason I went straight to Bud is simply because he's – as much as we talk about T.J. Watt, Defensive Player of the Year, Bud is like a small step behind him. He's not light years behind. Like, you could make the case that Bud, has had better games than TJ Watt, has shown to be able to play at TJ Watt ability, just not as consistently as TJ Watt does. So Bud is so good and literally only getting better. He looks as good as ever this year. You mentioned it as well in coverage. He's way better in coverage than he gets credit for. The guy does a lot and does a lot well. And as much as I like Alex Highsmith and like what I've seen from Alex Highsmith, I feel like the gap between him and Bud is bigger than losing Juju and who would replace him.
And I agree with you too. Bud's just keep getting better every year. I thought he was playing at a Pro Bowl level last year and should have been in the conversation at least to make his first Pro Bowl last season. And this season he's doing the exact same thing. I know he did not get a stat for the game yesterday, but he had that one play where he was in the backfield with Watt as they came on Henry behind the play. There's another one where they lined up Bud right there on the center. He threw the center 4 yards into the backfield and just missed the tackle on Henry, and Henry ended up getting 4 or 5 yards on that play. But, I mean, it just goes to show you how diverse a player is when you can have an edge rusher come inside and throw their starting center back 3 yards.
Right.
I mean, that's just an amazing play.
It's ridiculous.
Going into the season, I would have said hands down, you keep Juju. It's not even a question. But now that all the other receivers are starting to develop, it's like, I can see us living without Juju if that was the case.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it because he's Pittsburgh. I mean, he's Litzberg. I mean, this is a guy that's brand is Pittsburgh right now. I love the guy. I love big receivers. I love receivers in general, and he will work as hard as anybody on that field to make sure the Steelers are winning games.
Yeah.
But I mean, just looking at how Bud Dupree, it seems like when he was drafted, we always said he was a kind of a, we had to build him into it, but he had an extremely high ceiling because of all this athleticism that he brings to the table. He still hasn't hit that ceiling yet.
It's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy.
I mean, that's insane watching him play.
I mean, the other element of this that almost doesn't even need to be said, but do you trust Colbert and company to draft another receiver or to draft an outside linebacker? Like, I could see them easily finding another receiver moving forward to just slide in, whereas outside linebacker, obviously they got a good eye for that talent as well, but maybe not quite as good as their wide receiver drafting and development. So I don't know, man. Ultimately, if you're a Steelers fan, you want both of those guys to stay around, but I would have to go Juju being the one that they could afford to lose more, but it's not by much. It's not by as much as people might think.
No, not at all. And do we have any more Facebook questions?
We had Michael Mitchell slamming calling Gostkowski the Mose Queso of kickers. So there's that.
There we go.
And, sir, I just want to say that Gostkowski was, an all-pro at one point, perennial Pro Bowler, Super Bowl winner. So you kind of played yourself with that one.
Yeah, that is true.
The other questions we actually just got to in the flow of the show.
Perfect.
Ray McLeod talking about how would they stop Lamar, things like that. So,
well, shouts out here to Josh and as well, and Gabriel as well too for shouting out here on Twitter. Thanks for the questions, guys. There's one other matchup I want to get your opinion on too, and this is something like completely a Steeler Nation feel thing. And I'm going up. This is a matchup of rookies. You got Chase Claypool taking a pick 49 when a lot of Steeler Nation wanted him to use J.K. Dobbins with that pick, but he ended up going 6 picks later to the Ravens. So how is this matchup feeling for you? J.K. Dobbins, Chase Claypool, the better pick. Who works better in the system? What do you see there, Hunter?
It's funny that it took this long for us to get to that, and I actually totally forgot about it. But I can happily say, and I got the receipts for this. This is the beauty of working in sports media, is that you write things and your tweets are public, your articles are public. I can go back and find this if I have to. I was saying from the jump that Chase was the better pick over J.K. Dobbins, and they did not need to take a running back there.
No.
So I can happily say that I loved it from day one, and I love it even more now.
Yeah.
Seeing Chase's potential and what he can do. And it's not that Dobbins is bad, he's actually playing fine for them. He's not getting as many snaps as Ingram and Gus Edwards or Lamar, who carries for that matter. Yeah. But he's doing fine with what he's got and doing an okay job. I'm sure he'll be fine. But Chase is clearly the better pick, not just in general, but for the Steelers specifically, I think, because you see already Benny Snell looking good when he gets his chance and McFarland looking good in limited opportunities here and there. So they're fine without Dobbins, but can you say they would be fine without Claypool? I mean, I don't know. Claypool single-handedly won a game already this year, basically. So he's been more of a deal breaker, more of a game breaker for them. Obviously the right pick, and I think time will only prove that more correct.
And also with Chase Claypool, he's that special teams demon as well.
Crazy.
So, I mean, you're getting 2 phases out of Claypool as opposed to just 1 phase from Dobbins, who I think his talent is still coming out of the backfield like a Ray Rice type deal with that we're used to seeing against us with that Raven offense. But moving forward, the question may be who ends up being the better pick, J.K. Dobbins or Anthony McFarland.
Oh, that would be a little more interesting.
2 rounds later, who was a very diverse back as well and gives us pretty much that wanted skill set that Pittsburgh Steelers wanted. We wanted a nice quick back that was good pass catcher out of the backfield, but we got him 2 rounds later, and the guy is actually faster. And a little bit more elusive than Dobbins.
It's a
stronger runner, probably.
Similar skill set, and I think we've seen all along this year, as far as if you guys play fantasy football or whatever, this. If a running back goes down, their backup is instantly like a top-tier play. You can just count on any running back that gets, 20 to 25 touches in today's NFL is going to put up numbers. They're going to get stats. They're going to be fine. It's just a less valuable position, and I know I've said this for a while, and sorry, any running backs out there. I'm not saying you don't matter and the team doesn't need you, but I am saying that running back is way more replaceable than other positions on the field.
So last question I have for you, Hunter.
Oh, no.
The way these receivers have been going each week, we've had different leaders in receptions every freaking game. It seems like the top 2 changes week for week. 2 weeks ago, it was Washington and Claypool. This past week, it was Juju and DJ.
Yeah.
So who do you see going into the Ravens game as being your top 2 receivers?
Wow. Dude, that's a great question.
Yeah.
How about give me – okay, this is going to be the first week that it's the same 2 guys, Juju and Deontay, again this week. I like them. I know, I mean, the Ravens' top 2 corners are great, but I think they'll create some mismatches. I like Patrick Queen a lot, helping with the middle, helping with the Ebron, kind of shutting them down. Vance would be the ultimate wild card.
Right?
I would have said – dude, let's go with DJ. Let's go with DJ and Vance just for fun instead. Sorry, Juju. I'm taking you out, Juju. Vance is going to do something. This is Vance's week.
This is going to be we're Steeler fans. We're going to see one of these weeks where Eric Ebron's going to be our leader in receptions.
Absolutely.
And I personally wouldn't be surprised if he gets the stats this week,
Nice.
as well as Deontay Johnson, because Deontay Johnson is just that he gets open quicker off the line of scrimmage than anybody else we have on the roster. So he's going to see a lot of balls. He's going to see a lot of targets. When he's healthy, he's going to get balls.
Absolutely.
That's just the way it's going to be for Deontay Johnson. Across the board, though, like for you saying, I can obviously see Juju as well. Either Juju or Ebron being that extra guy.
Yeah.
But what a great problem to have.
It's tough to pick. And then easily, I mean, I could obviously see Claypool breaking a huge play or just being a consistent part because, like I said, their top two corners are amazing in Baltimore. Yeah. So maybe it will be, come down to Claypool or Washington to exploit some mismatches and things like that. So who knows? Like that's the beauty of this Steelers offense is that week to week you truly don't know, and defenses don't know either, and that's why it's been successful so far.
Yeah, so it'll be fun because I think this is the first time also that we've had a really, receiver capable tight end. I mean, obviously Heath Miller was amazing, but he was a blocking tight end. But he's a fantastic receiver too. I mean, don't get me wrong with that, but Eric
I know what you're saying.
Is faster.
Absolutely.
I mean, this was supposed to have was Mercedes Lewis. Was that the guy that we had before? I know I'm going to get somebody's name wrong.
Darius Green.
Darius Green. There we go. I always get that one wrong.
There you go.
Yeah, but because he was going to be that speed demon tight end that was going to be that pass catcher that we always kind of wanted because we were so sick of getting killed by Gronk and those types of players.
Right.
Now we have one of those kind of players, and I think this is going to be tough for the Ravens to have to kind of game plan against that kind of player since it's this type of player they've never had to game plan against us for.
For sure. It's interesting, man. I mean, Mark Andrews, as good as he is, he made a Pro Bowl last year.
Yeah.
It's, you could make the case that Ebron is right there with him as far as being a receiver. So it's nice that the Steelers finally have that kind of firepower from the tight end position. And all credit to Heath, but I know exactly what you're saying. I don't recall Heath ever being split out wide and running fades in the end zone and things like that. Like Ebron's basically a receiver. So yeah.
So his blocking is getting a little better, but thank you very much, Steeler Nation, Twitter, Facebook, SteelerNation.com, giving us all great questions today. You guys are what power us and make us as awesome as we are, so we really appreciate your input. Hunter, another amazing hour with you, my friend. Follow Hunter.
For sure.
Follow Hunter on Twitter and Instagram at Hunter A. Homistech. That's at HunterAHomistek, and we will see us back together at 2 p.m. Love you, Hunter. Thanks again, man. You did a great job.
Yes, sir. Thanks, dude. That was really fun. Thanks for all the questions, guys. Super fun episode. Ravens week is obviously always extra fun. So I've said it at the end of every show. See you next week, maybe 7-0, man. That would feel crazy.
I know. Let's match the 78 team, right? With 78 or 79?
79, I think, yeah.
79, yep. Let's do it.
Enough. Same thing.
Cheers, man.
All right, dude. Later on.
See you, man. All right. And I can't even find where there it is. You dropped off. So, Steeler Nation, visit our title sponsor, Total Sports Enterprises, on Twitter to be a part of their signed merch giveaways. Win that DJ jersey, obviously, that's out there right now. Signed Color Rush jersey at Total Sports ENT, or check out their website at tseshop.com. You too can get great, unique gifts at SteelerNation.com gear page, like this awesome Steeler Nation shirt I am currently wearing, established 1933. Click to SteelerNation.com. Click on the gear page. We got every size, lots of colors, lots of options, fun sayings. Jump on and make your virtual tailgate the best tailgate on the planet. SteelerNation.com is the best site for fast, unique Steelers content on the internet. Click the podcast button to listen to one of our many interviews, or the forum button to be part of the best football discussion on the web. Subscribe to SteelerNation.com YouTube channel to be first to know about our live vidcasts and video uploads. Tweet us at Steeler Nation. Instagram us at SteelerNation.com. Follow the Steeler Nation podcast on Twitter at _SN Podcast and Instagram at Steeler Nation Podcast. And follow your host, Steeler Nation Striker, on Twitter and Instagram at SN Striker. Striker is spelled with a Y. And do you want to listen to more Striker this week? Well, I've got a treat for you guys, Steeler Nation. I was a special guest for a podcast, one of my good friends, Brett, on her podcast, High Tea with Monsters, Rebel Scum, and Vigilantes on Apple Podcasts. You mean I know more than the Steelers? I do. I love sci-fi. I love TV. I love movies. Episode 12 is the one I'm on. We recapped Raised by Wolves, the show on HBO Max, the Netflix movie I Am Mother, and also speculated a bit on the forthcoming Disney Plus show, WandaVision. So if you like sci-fi like I do, it's a fun listen. That's High Tea with Monsters, Rebel Scum, and Vigilantes on Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for joining us on SteelerNation.com podcast, sponsored by Total Sports Enterprises. I'm your host, G Striker, with Hunter Homestead, rooting along with you as always. Go Steelers!